Welcome! In this series of videos, we will cover the design and implementation of a project, from initial design through coding and development to testing, using the PowerBasic Windows compiler. Today we will continue our project to create our own web browser. This was our application at the end of the last video. We have begun the project to create a Lite Web Browser. Our web browser already supports a number of HTML tags, namely the title tag and the paragraph tag. If we go into our sample page, drag it across to the browser, it will support drag and drop and display the HTML page in the browser window. In current browsers, it's quite normal to expect the user to open a number of tabs, each tab containing a different web page. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be adding tab support to our browser. So let's have a look at our code. We have already set up a global array to store the handle of all the tabs. We're going to make use of that today, and we're also going to create another global array. This array is going to keep track of the URL that's held on each tab. And we'll call this a global array, which is a string of URLs. This will contain exactly the same number of elements as the tab handles array. So how can we facilitate the addition of additional tabs to the browser window? Currently, we're only showing one tab. We're going to create a second tab on this tab control, and this tab is going to be the tab the user will click on to create a new tab window. So we need to have a look at the event handler of our main dialog where the tab is actually created. At the beginning of this event handler, the callback function, there's an initialize dialog section. In here, we're inserting the tab page, this being tab number 1, and we're titling that with the word home. We're redimensioning our array for tab handles to be of one element, and we're populating the first element with the handle we get back when we insert the tab page. So after we've added this first tab, we're going to automatically add a second tab. So we are redimensioning our tab handles array to have two elements now. And our second tab is going to be added as tab number 2, and the text within that tab is going to be the plus sign. Additionally, I want to create a new global variable to keep track of the tab which is currently selected. This will save some coding later on in the application. The other thing I want to impose some controls on are the number of tabs the user is allowed to create. Browsers can be quite hungry beasts when it comes to the resource on your computer. So for the moment, we're going to set a maximum number of tabs that the user can open up. We can always increase this value later, but we will set the value to be initially for 10 tabs. So we're creating a constant called max tabs to contain the value 10, and we're creating a global variable for the tab currently selected. And I'm going to create one additional variable for a global handle for the main dialog. So before we go any further, let's try running the application to see if our second tab appears. So there we have a second tab. We can switch between the first tab, which is labelled Home, and the second tab, which is labelled Plus. The idea behind the second tab is to allow the user to click on it, and when they click on it, we want a new tab inserted between the Home tab and the Plus tab. We will then want focus shifted to the second new tab. So the sole purpose of the Plus tab is to allow the user to be able to click on it to create a new tab. So we'll need to put some logic in there to pick up when the user clicks on the Plus tab. Additionally, since we've limited the user to having only 10 tabs, we'll need to dimension our URLs array to be the same number of elements. So we'll do that in the PB main function. And we're again using the max tabs constant to set that to the value of 10 elements. So in order to pick up the detection of clicking on this tab, we'll need to put some more logic inside our callback function, our event handler. So we're going to create a new section within this event handler logic called WM Notify. This will handle our notifications on the tab control. And we're going to create a new local variable to keep track of what has been clicked upon. And our pointer header is actually picking up the L parameter. We're testing that to see which control this came from, and we're testing on tab 1, which is the handle of the tab control itself. We can then test for the particular event we're looking for. In this case, it's a TCN selection change event. This triggers once the user has clicked on a new tab. This will trigger when any tab has actually been clicked on. So we're specifically looking for the last tab in the row, the plus tab. So we will pick up the top page number by using the ubound command to tell us the largest bounding of the tab handles array. We can then use the tab get select command to pick up the tab which has been selected. And we're storing that in our global variable tab selected. Now that we have those two values, the upper bounding of the tabs and the tab the user has actually selected, we can perform a test. If the page number equals the top page number, we're on the last tab. This is the one with the plus sign. And as long as that number is less than the maximum number of tabs, then we can go ahead and create a new tab. So to do that, we're going to increment the top page number to advance it by 1. And then we're going to use the tab set text command to create a new tab, and we're going to title that tab with the word new. And then we can insert a brand new page onto our tab control, which will be our plus page, the last page in the list. So now that we've added a brand new tab, we'll need to redimension our tab handles. And we will populate the last element in tab handles with the handle of the page we have just added. As this is a brand new tab, we want to ensure that the graphics control is completely blank. We could quite easily create a new graphics control for each tab. However, that would take up a significant amount of resource, especially if we're looking at having 10 separate tabs. So what we're going to do is we're going to reuse the existing graphics control. So there will only be one graphics control in the entire application. So now that we've made visible to the user the new tab, we will clear the content of the graphics control. As we'll be doing this possibly in a number of places, we'll create a new common function to clear the graphics control. And then we will set the text in the URL text box to blank. We will create this new function in a moment, but for now we will continue the coding in this particular section to handle the other options. We have tested to see if the page number equals the top page number. Are we on the very last tab? The if block we're currently inside is the one that tests where the page number is less than the maximum number of tabs. If that is not true, we want to handle and set the focus back to the previous tab. And if the page number does not equal the top page number, then some other tab has been selected. So we need to pick up the URL that's been stored in our URLs array. And having done that, we can populate that value in the text box to show the URL to the user. We can then clear our graphics control using the new function we're about to create, and we can render the HTML using the existing function. So there are a few variables we need to create at the beginning of this function. So we have created our header variable as a pointer, we've created the page number and the top page number. So let's now create the clear graphics control function. This is going to be a very small function. Using the graphics clear command to change the background of the graphics control to white, and then to perform a graphics redraw to display this to the user. If we try running our application now, and we click on the plus tab, we're now getting a new tab appearing in the middle between the home and the plus. If we click it once more, we'll get new tabs appearing right up to the point where we get to the maximum number of tabs. And at that point, it will create no new more tabs. So we now have 10 tabs on screen. So we have successfully given the user a way of creating new tabs. And in each of these tabs, they can quite happily drag over or browse to a new web page. However, when the user clicks on the tab, it's not redrawing the page. So we'll need to put an automatic redraw function in when they select a tab. So back to the code. The other thing we need to do is to store the URL in our global array. So if we go back to the event handler, and in our event handler, we have an OK section of that code. And in here is where we render the HTML. And we're going to add a little piece of code onto this to select the tab and store the URL in our global array. And we also need to put this logic into the drag and drop section. So the same 2 lines of code. First of all, selecting the tab number and then populating that element within the global array with the URL. So let's try running that code once more. If we add a few new tabs and then drag in one of our pages, go back to the home page and drag in another page and go back to the other demo page, it should now display, and the new ones will show as blank because they have no URL, but the demo page ones are now correctly populating. So we have now achieved the ability to add new tabs and have them populated, and the application will remember the URL for that page. So as well as adding new tabs, we need to give the user a mechanism by which they can remove a tab, close a tab down. So back to the code. To perform this function, there are a number of different ways of actually doing it. We could use a menu option, but in this case, I'm going to keep it simple and I'm going to create a brand new dialog, albeit a very small dialog with no caption bar. And this is our new dialog. It's very small and it contains only one button. If we click on the test, we will see this is all that will show to the user on screen. A very small dialog containing a single button. If we have a look at the styles for this, we can see the only thing we've actually got selected is clip siblings. The caption, sysmenu and minimize ones are all unticked. So now that we have this new dialog created, how can we call this from inside the application? As always, there are a number of options. However, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to set the graphics control up to support right clicks on that control. And when right click is clicked, the new dialog will appear, showing the user the small dialog with a single button to allow them to close the tab. So in order to support that, I'm going to set up another global variable. And this we're going to call old graphic proc. This will hold the old graphics control callback details. So in order to set this up, we'll need to put some more code in the initialize dialog section of the event handler, the callback function of our main dialog. So we're setting a static variable up called graphic to hold the handle of our graphics window. And then we're using a Windows API call called setWindowLong to pick up the code pointer to our new callback function. So we're going to create a new function called graphic_proc. And since we've set this up, we'll need to handle when the dialog is destroyed. So we'll put a new destroy section in our callback function. And this will be triggered when the dialog is about to be destroyed. And it will call that function again, but it will put back the value we've stored in old graphic_proc. So now that we've set that up, we'll need to create this new function, graphic_proc. And here is our new function, taking the parameters that our callback requires. And in here, we're looking for specifically the right button up event. This will get our mouse coordinates when the user lets go of the right mouse button, having pushed it down. And we're testing a global variable, which is the one we populated with the currently selected tab number. At the moment, I've got it set so that it only looks for tabs other than the first tab, so we can avoid the user deleting the first tab. And this will call our new dialog, tab click. passing two parameters, the X and Y coordinates that the user has actually clicked on. I'm leaving these in place, although we're not actually using them at the moment, as we may well need to know where on the screen the user's mouse is. So all we need to do now is to populate the callback function, the event handler, for our new small dialog. So here is the callback function for the new dialog. And we already have a section set up for the clicking on the Close tab button. The first thing we need to do is to close the current tab, but we'll need to test to make sure that the tab selected is not beyond the last element of our array. And if that is the case, we can use the tab delete command and our global variable for the parent handle to delete the tab selected. Now that we have deleted the tab, we have to do some tidying up of our arrays. We have two global arrays, the first holding the tab handle, the second holding the URL that tab is currently pointing at. So we'll want to delete those entries in the array, and we can use the array delete command for this. The array delete command will remove that entry and shuffle all the values above that in the array down one. This leaves a blank entry at the end of the array. So in order to remove that, we can do a redim with the preserve option. This will effectively remove this last entry completely. So our array now matches the number of tabs we have. And the tab that's been deleted is now completely removed. As we have removed a tab, we'll need to actually set the tab selected by reducing it by 1. And we can now reset to the new focus tab by using the tab select command. And then set the text on the screen to the URL coming from the global array. And our final task would be to clear the graphics control and re-render the HTML, using the two functions we have already created and used before. Now that we've completed that, we can now close down the dialog. So now that we have that in place, let's see if our application performs as expected. So let's try running the application now. If we add a couple of extra tabs and then right-click, our new dialog is appearing, however it's down below the application. We'll want this new dialog appearing up here in the control, so we need to use those X and Y coordinates to position our dialog. So let's go back to the code once more. We're passing in the X and Y coordinates that the user has actually clicked upon. I'm going to create a couple of new local variables for our parent dialog location, as we may not actually need these two values passed in. And we can use the dialog getParent value to populate these px and py variables. And we can set the dialog's location by using dialog setLocation. So let's try running that now. So if we move our window up, add a couple of new ones, and if we right click, we can now see the Close tab is appearing very close to where we've clicked. If we click on Close tab, the new tab disappears. So to test this out properly, I've created an extra HTML page. If we bring in the first one and the second one, we now have two demo pages, demo page 2 and demo page 1. And we still have our home page blank. If we go to demo page 2, right click, close the tab, demo page 2 has disappeared, but demo page 1 is still there. And if we right click on the home page, it will not show the pop-up, but it will do it on all other pages. So in summary, what we've achieved today is we have set the browser up to support multiple tabs. The user can now add up to 10 tabs at any one time on the browser control. They can also close each of those tabs down, but it will always keep the first tab and the plus tab visible to the user. And we're storing the URL for each tab in a global array. Hopefully you'll find this code useful in your applications, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching.